Aloha, Flow Riders, and welcome to this edition of The Flow. Today is going to be a good one because Katie is giddy. So, I am your host, Doc Rock, along with my awesome co-host.
Well, it's Katie. You know me
there
now.
There you go. You know what it is. I like the sweater. That is awesome. Did you buy that when we went there, or you already had that?
So I was in the Chicago airport, and it was aggressively cold, and I'm really proud of myself because I was like, I'm not going to spend any money. I'm just going to live with this. And then I walked by, and there was this sweatshirt. It was only $20, which I think is a steal.
Oh, come on.
It's like, it's cool. It says Chicago. I love Chicago. So yeah. So I'm repping Chicago today. Hello to all of our Chicago fans.
Oh my God, that's awesome. I forgot where Paul and I went, but it was someplace that I would never go to. But I was so freezing when I was in Mass. And then we went in, and I found a really cool Boston Celtics sweatshirt for like $15, and I bought it, and I actually liked it. And they were like, "Oh, that's a really nice sweatshirt." And I was like, I never in a million years would have walked into this store because it's like not in my wheelhouse.
Yeah,
but it was funny. Okay, so what are we talking about today, Kates?
All right, so we are talking about another podcast, a huge podcast. It is called Toni and Ryan, but I want to give a content warning. So I chose today's episode because I think that we can learn a lot from listening and watching other podcasts, and this one is one of my favorites. But I will say that this podcast does have a lot of salty language and slightly scandalous topics. And so if this is not the kind of podcast for you, I still think you'll learn a lot in this episode, but please don't go over and listen or watch this podcast if you are not a fan of salty language or inappropriate content. I just think it makes a really great example. So yeah, we're diving into what we can steal from other podcasts. And in this particular one, we are talking about the Toni and Ryan podcast, which is a comedy podcast out of Australia. I dropped the link into the chat, and it's also in all the descriptions and show notes. But yeah, I'm excited. I have forced many a person to listen to this show. So, today we're going to talk all about it.
It is funny. It's an absolute train wreck, but that's why it's funny.
Yeah.
I mean, that entirety of that train wreck is what's there, because it's almost like the rubberneck syndrome, right? When you see a car accident, you like want to look at it and see what's going to happen. Because it is such a train wreck, you're kind of like waiting to see what the next train wreck is going to be.
Yep. But
it's an organized train wreck, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, I picked this one specifically for a few different reasons. One is that it is a daily podcast, which is something I would never want to do. But I think it's a great kind of learning experience for people. And they pull it off really, really well. Obviously, these two are full-time podcasters, so this is their full job. But it is a daily podcast. It started by implementing, they had I think it was once a week, they did a YouTube specific episode that was also available for listeners. But the other 4 days of the week were audio only episodes. So they started with that format, and then they have since changed to now all of their episodes are both available on YouTube as well as listening friendly. And they do a really phenomenal job as well with their community. And that is where they get the majority, if not all, of their content. And because it is a show that is basically just two best friends talking about all kinds of different things. And as I said, it's a comedy podcast. So I think it's a really, really great example for all of us because they are doing the most. They are doing probably the quote unquote hardest thing. And they are, as far as content planning and topics, they're also not overly niche. So they are kind of breaking a lot of the different rules that exist out there, but they do it really effectively. And I think that there's a lot that we can learn from them and from what they're doing. So,
all right. So two things. The rules are there to sort of help the beginners so that they don't flail until they build their audience.
Yep.
Once you build your audience and you have buy-in from your audience, you can break every freaking rule in the book because your people are already there, right? When you're trying to, let's say if you start a burger restaurant, right? You can't come out the gate with tartar.
True.
Because you said burger restaurant.
Yeah.
You didn't say tartar restaurant, which is a whole different thing. And there's tartar from all myriad cultures, right? So like in Korean is yukgaejang, right? But, of course, there's your standard tartar. There's various different tartars. So, yeah, the rules are there mostly for, and if you look at, this is where people get in trouble. Because when we tell people they got to need to make a niche or do these various other things that are the quote unquote rules, then they go, well, so-and-so doesn't have any rules. I'm like, yeah, so-and-so has 20 million followers, ding dong. So if 10% of their people don't show up one day, they still have 200, that's the other way around. If 90% of their people doesn't show up, they still got 200,000, people listening. Like you're not in that boat. You have to follow, a little bit of the structure. So yeah, the first thing is those rules are there mostly to help beginners not flail. Mm-hmm. And then the other part is I'll take, okay, I don't want to say this because I don't want to be dismissive, but if you were to do, okay, computers ain't even been invented yet. Most of us are old enough to be around where they're kind of like barely around. Like, well, they've been around since the 60s, but, the way we do it today, like, everybody has one in their house. Every
personal
person
computer
in the house has one personally, there's 4 in your house, right? Yeah. Like that, right? Which is strange because I have 8 and it's just me. I don't make any sense. Anyway, but me and my friends, every morning while we're waiting for the homeroom, or at the office, the quote-unquote water cooler talk before the shift starts, you had like 20-minute yap session about everything that popped into everybody's mind. Mm-hmm. If we recorded that, that's a podcast.
Mm-hmm. That is literally this podcast. So not ours, 100%. But the Toni and Ryan podcast. So
because people spend too much time looking at other people's ish instead of paying attention to their own paper, they think that that's not a podcast. Yep. I mean, to the point where, not to be picky, but I've mentioned it a couple of times because it was very enlightening to me that MC thought a podcast needed to be an hour. Mm-hmm. Like, and again, that's because all of the marketing people that we know that we're friends with, they love to do their shows exactly an hour and cut it. Like it can't be an hour and 1 second for no reason, but they all just do it. So it kind of becomes a thing. Yep. And, here I come from Twit where we have 3-hour podcasts, and I also got people that got 3-minute podcasts. Yep. So the fact that, like, I guarantee you everybody in the chat right this second, except for someone who doesn't have any friends, Jeremy, I'm joking, Jeremy, could find a buddy, crack the mic, and yap for 15 minutes flawlessly. No problem, right? That could just be me and June. Like, my brother and I are friends like that. Like, we could just crack the mic and, what's his name? The Taylor Swift brother and brother-in-law, boyfriend and brother-in-law. The Kelseys. Yeah. Right? Like, there's tons of family podcasts where they just crack the mic and talk. Yeah. Like, yeah, so people are overthinking it. So one of the first takeaways is you don't have to overthink this. No. Like, you technically do that with Nat, right? We're going to talk about a movie. All right, cool. Crack the mic, talk for an hour and some change. Go back to having whatever dinner or wine or whatever the case may be. Yeah. So and I like that.
I'll say that like it is interesting because this particular podcast definitely has this conversational vibe to it, right? And they have a huge community now that they've built up that behind them that they call the Tarpers, the Toni and Ryan Podcasters. So they're called the Tarpers, right? So they have a name. So they've named their community and it's very community focused, but it is actually pretty structured. So it is interesting that they allow a lot of time for banter and conversation, but they've created segments and structures so that they know what to fall back on. There's a vibe and a flow for each episode so that their community knows what to expect. So a couple of the things that they do, which I think are really smart and I wanted to talk through, is the first thing off the bat. So as I said, they have a community. They actually have a couple different community spaces where their community is and can contribute to the conversation. And they spend a lot of time digitally and in person with their community. But the intro to all of their episodes starts with a phone call from one of their members, one of their Tarpers, calls and quote unquote approves their podcast. So they set the tone right at the very beginning of the podcast that they have a community and that their community is involved in the podcast, and they're not even going to do the episode until the podcast is approved. And it is this like fun moment for them to kind of banter and involve a community member. They always like ask a question or get the community member to tell a story or something fun. It's only maybe a couple of minutes at the very beginning of the episode, but it kicks off and sets the tone for the entire episode. And it's easy for them to repeat, right? They know that every single episode kicks off with a Tarper who approves the podcast. So much so that in a recent episode, they joked because one of their listeners doesn't listen to any other podcast and had no idea that all podcasts don't do this. Like in their mind, they were like, all podcasts kick off with someone approving the podcast. Like you can't have a podcast without someone approving it, right? That's the level of fandom that they've created. But again, this is a great tip for all of us to pick up on, is that it's one thing to build a community, but really understanding how you can involve your community in the actual show. And what are those defined moments that are repeatable that you can create to make it a fun experience for your listeners and for your viewers. Lou Mangello does a really great job of this as well. Shout out to Lou, who is a speaker at our upcoming camp event. He always asks a question to his audience. And there's like many cases, like, you know, it's like a kind of trivia giveaway feel to it. So his community knows that there's always going to be this question that they have to answer, that they're participating in part of the episode creation, right? All of you who are hanging out with us here live in our studio audience, right? You know that you're flow riders. You know, if you're live in the studio audience, we're going to see some of your names. We're going to shout you out. We're going to take your questions live, right? So I think from the very start, kind of having a really good understanding of community is a great thing we can steal from this show. So, and knowing what you're going to do with your community. So it doesn't have to be, you don't have to take their specific idea of approving a podcast episode, but think through like why podcasters and creators are doing the things that they're doing, what you like about it, and what you think is the reasoning behind it, because that's what you can take to your show and give it your own flavor and your own spice. What do you think, Doc?
Yeah, and I think that's big too. I mean, you know me, like I'm like, it's funny because you go to conferences, all everybody talks about is growing their audience. And I'm like, yo, you really got to change that. And it seems trivial, but there's a huge difference between the audience and the community. Audience just listen. It's literally in the breakdown of the word,
yep.
Right? Whereas the community requires some back and forth, things like that.
Yep.
When someone wants an audience with you, they just want you to listen to them. And yeah, it's a whole different vibe. So I do think that part was funny. Especially, the lady who had to add USA to the end of her, and she's in a pretty prominent city that didn't require her to add the USA.
It's like, I'm in Chicago, USA.
USA. I'm like, really? Thanks, lady. Everybody already thinks we're dumb. Like, chill out. Well, I think, again, what makes it so good is the fact that they are just having this conversation, but you mentioned the structure of it, and of course it's there. You can tell they have it sort of segmented out. Mm-hmm. But I'm willing to bet if you have a weekly or daily gathering with friends at work or whatever, there's a structure there. You just might not realize it there, mm-hmm. right? So, for instance, if we were all, we have it right now. Okay, so we're in the office. Me, you, Caleb, Paul, Jill having a meeting. And right when we get ready to go live, Ken walks in, makes coffee. That's structure. Like that happens every time. Yep. Not a little bit, every time. Yep. Right now in the podcast, right when we started, you would have heard the bell kick off, right? Yep. Well, you're not at the office today, but if you're at the office, you would have heard the Amesbury horn. Mm-hmm. So even the things that you don't realize you have structure in, you have a structure, which is why the Mr. Rogers intro was kind of funny because people don't realize they do that. They walk in the house, put down their keys, change their shoes.
Yep.
I put on my jacket because it's freezing in my house because I live with an Eskimo. And you do the same thing every day. So you actually already have the structure stuff and you just don't realize it. Like even if you're flailing your show, you probably still have structure and don't realize it. So you just got to lean into those, mm-hmm. right? If you have a thing where this time of year, you're going to always be sniffling. Allergy season just kicked off. This is going to be me till November. Like, you could just lean into it. You can make it a thing. Be like, not sponsored by Kleenex, but Kleenex, hey, we're open to we're open to options. Like, it becomes a thing. Everybody is laughing. So Toni has travel flu or something, and she's spending like half the show sniffling and wiping her nose and like blowing her nose or whatever. And it's just funny because she's normally at her studio at home doing her thing, but you come to a different country, you probably go catch the sniffles. It's because you're just not used to it.
Yep.
Right? So I find all of that was hilarious. It's super good.
Yeah, I love it. And I think that, again, this show does a great job of structure, but not like they're not boxed in by the structure. So they clearly have a number of different segments. Normal or Nah is my favorite and one they do on a regular basis. But if you listen to the show often, you will notice that it's not every single show that they do the normal or Nah segment. It is, they clearly have like a box of segment ideas that they are constantly putting new segment ideas into, and they just, each episode, it's almost like they pull from the box and are like, okay, this episode they're going to do normal or Nah, this other episode they're going to do confessions. They have their Tarpers send in confessions. They have like another episode where they're going to do, so they have segments, but they are flexible enough to be always testing and trying out different segments, and they're responding to what their community wants to hear from them, or what's timely and interesting at the time. And they're flexible enough that if something was to come up because they're a daily podcast, they're just going to talk about that instead. So again, if you're like a planner like me and you're an overthinker, like many of us are out there, have segments to give you ideas and to keep the flow coming. But maybe we could take as an idea from this show, the level of flexibility that you can bank a bunch of segment ideas and swap them in as you need them, but be flexible enough that if the show content is going in a great direction, go with that. Like you'll see which segments after a while are the ones that are the most popular or that really resonate with your community. But it's not like you haven't failed in the episode if you don't do that segment each and every single time. And I think this show's a great example of that. Our show doesn't have segments at all. And often I'm like, oh man, we started with the idea of segments. We were doing like one, 3 points per episode was how the show kicked off. And then we were going to chop that up into like little smaller video points. And then it just didn't make sense for how we wanted the show to go. And so we were able to be flexible with it. We could add segments in at any time and swap and test that out. But I think structure with flexibility is important.
Correct. So we have, we start off with a question of the day for Mary Lou and I. We start off with a question of the day, then we go into 2 bullet points, and then we do pick of the week, and then we go into the last bullet point. And then after that, we give like the key takeaway or, something that people can try. Sort of semi call to action, semi like which really matters. And then at the very end, Mary Lou does rapid fire questions for me. That, you don't get a chance to think about it. You just got to go in and answer. And in the notes, like there's a little drop down, and it's a running joke now that almost 40 episodes in, I've never clicked that little twirly to see what's under there because it's Notion, right?
Yeah.
But even the fact that we build the document like before we start the recording live so that everybody can see that we'll change the topic right before we go. And you'll watch us change the topic because something comes up, and it will rewrite the entire show right then and there based on something somebody brought up in the chat.
Yep.
And it's to get people over the fact of overthinking it. It's to get past this concept of you need to have it completely planned out.
Yep.
And I find on the shows where we do a last minute, you know what, we're going to do this because this just happened and this needs to be squared. Those are better.
Mm-hmm.
They just are. Don't ask me why. I got no science to it, but they just are. So you're right. Having that flexibility, again, one thing about having a structure is, again, it's a scaffolding.
Yep.
So you can break it all you want, but what it does help you with is when you're absolutely blanking, you can always go to the scaffolding because there's something for you to grab onto.
Yep.
and then you can go from there. That's the whole point of having this structure. It isn't to box you in. It's to imagine your body with no skeleton. There you go. That's the end of that. You'll be just a blob. You just be a big old blob like of nothing. So it's like that. It's really something for you to grab onto and sort of make it a thing. And strangely enough, against all thought process, I think that most people, when they're first starting out, should start with a daily. Mm-hmm. And nobody wants to hear that because everybody thinks it's too much work. But I think everybody and their mother should start with a daily. 292 days into making a video every day and not even sweating. I haven't broken a sweat. Like it hasn't caused me a single bout of pain, including when we are traveling. We're done. We out. We went to go eat, drink, the whole 9 yards. I'm like, all right, I'm going back to record my show. And they're like, but it's 10:30. And I'm like, and? Yeah. Right? Like not even a thought because you have to get it done. Mm-hmm. So I go and I record. And I'm not making like, oh, here's my lunch. Okay, that's the video. I make a full ass video. Like record it, sometimes edit it, sometimes not. Sometimes I barely even edit it. Like yesterday's episode, no edit. I say what I had to say, put the end card, ship it. Yep. Right? But the reps, and I mentioned this in my video yesterday. Okay, so your goal is to be seen by as many people as possible. That's what everybody wants. No matter what lies you tell yourself, at the end of the day, it's what everybody wants. Because if you go somewhere and you ask somebody, like if you could have anything you want in your podcast you want, I want more viewers, I want more listeners, I want more subscribers. Whatever the terminology that you use, that is what everybody says. And if you want more eyeballs, you want more promotion, then you need to put more places for it to be grabbed, right? So I mentioned the concept, and strangely enough, the concept that I thought about this, the analogy, came from your barn. But I'm like, if I'm trying to throw darts and hit the bullseye and I make a weekly episode while I'm trying to, make my perfect show, mm-hmm. I have 4 chances to hit the bullseye. But if I'm making a daily show while I'm trying to figure out what I'm doing, I have 31, 30, or 28, or 29. That didn't say that right. 31, 30, 29, 28 days or 28 chances to hit the freaking bullseye.
Yep.
Who's going to hit the bullseye first? It's a probability situation, right? So all of the people who are brand new, who are like, oh, I don't know what to do. Cool. You don't need to know what to do. Just make 100 episodes of practice. You could actually hide them. You could call that season 0 and then come up with season 1. But the idea of waiting to put one out every 3-4 weeks because I'm still figuring it out, I'm going to be absolute mean, stupid. It just is. And I don't care if you're mad at me for saying that. Call me. Email me, Doc at Ecamm. I'm down to know. But if you're trying to get good at it, you got to do it. And that's the only way. It just really is.
Yeah. And I will say too that I am definitely aware of the fact that, a show like this or even like ours, you're coming in and listening and we have a community. The show, the Toni and Ryan show, they have a community. But as they were thinking through these different segments initially, there wasn't anyone to ask to get content from for these segments, right? So the normal or nah segment that they do, they literally take from their community group people who will share stories. So they'll say like, Doc loves to wake up at 4 a.m. so that he can have his coffee and get going. Is that normal or nah? And then Toni and Ryan will say like, nah, waking up that early in the morning is crazy. And they have this whole discussion back and forth on it, right? But they could have started that segment just asking each other normal or not questions that were relatable. And the more that their audience heard that each and every episode or however often they did their segments, and the more that they were constantly posing that question to their community, then they start and making it easy for their community to respond back and answer. So they've built a space where people can type up those things and send them in. The more people start actually contributing to it. So it is going to take time. So if you're sitting here and you're like, what, Katie and Doc, I tried that, but my audience is not responding right away, or, it's crickets and I'm not hearing anything. You do, like, the idea of segments is also, as Doc was saying, like, is letting you build up being consistent, because it takes people a long time of hearing the same thing over and over again before they feel like they want to contribute, or they have a story they want to share, or that, they want to do the thing that you're asking them to do. So you do need to get consistent on, doing those, whether it's daily or weekly, whatever your consistency is, and whether it's a segment or your entire show. A community is not going to happen overnight. It's going to take some time, and finding your footing is not going to happen overnight. It's going to take some time. So it, again, is a good example of thinking through what you want to talk about, but also thinking through what might be relatable or interesting or, submission worthy of your community. Like, what are the things that they actually want to talk about? The community you're trying to build, what are the things that they want to talk about, right? Like my community on my podcast, they want to talk about old movies, and everyone has a favorite movie, or a movie that they love, or a movie that they've fully memorized. And if I can find what that movie is, like, or, and they want to come to that episode, right? They want to be able to share their experience of that episode, of that movie. They want to share their story. They want to be on the episode. So it's, for me, my challenge is thinking through, how do I get them to contribute on a regular basis to help, be part of my community, even if we're not talking about their favorite movie. How can I introduce them to different movies? Like, what is that balancing act? So you need to, as a creator, think about what audience and community are you trying to build, and what are the things that they find relatable and interesting, so that you can start building out some of these segments, or building out some of this loose structure that helps create that community down the road. So I think, again, this show is a great example of it, because they have made these topics easy for people to contribute to, and also super relatable to a pretty large audience. So like, everyone has weird things that they do. So it's not hard for you to think of something that you could send into them.
Not hard for you to figure it out.
Right?
And as far as you tried it, so
try it again. Keep trying it. Yeah.
Right. William Kellogg tried for like 2 years to try to make a cereal because he hated CW and Marjorie Post, and nothing happened.
Yep.
And then one day he left the grains out, and they kind of poofed up. And he was like, "You idiot, why'd you leave this out?" And the worker was like, my bad, and he's just snapping at this point because he's losing his cookies, so to speak. And then he said, "Well, roll it out. Let's see what happens if we flatten it." Cornflakes.
Yep.
Like, would you eat every single day? Like, blew Marjorie and CW Post out the water. Almost when you ask everybody about cereal now, the word Kellogg comes up.
Yep.
Right? Considered by a failure by his brother. Brother hated him. Like, he was at his last. He tried everything, and then he rolled an accident. And then, you know what I'm saying? So, like, who cares that you tried it? Do it again. Like, I'm sorry. It's just how it works, man. Like, so many things that you do every day right now. I'm sure there's tons of people in the 80s that tried to make taco restaurant. And they were like, no, fam, we only know Taco Bell. This little round soft things that you putting myriad stuff in, nope, not having it. Now you cannot walk 5 feet without hitting a taco restaurant, right? But I'm sure many people tried to do what came up in the mid-aughts, and I'm talking everywhere in the planet you can find taco restaurants. So yeah, it doesn't matter that you tried it, try it again. It's situational. All right, so one of the things that you put in the doc too was about their audio and visual choices.
Yep.
And I think that their design is so minimal, but it's awesome.
Yep.
Right? I think, again, one of the things that I see people struggling with is I don't know where they got this idea from or where they're trying to design the things from, but I see too many people try to over-design their show.
Yep.
And I look at so many of the quote unquote large shows, not a drip of design involved.
Mm-hmm.
So it's almost like, dudes of the 80s thinking that you had to have a Camaro or a Firebird or a Corvette in order to be dateable. It turns out like most girls don't care about that stuff, right? But we did. We thought that was so important. Everybody wanted to have the Dukes of Hazzard car or the, what is that, Smokey and the Bandit?
Yeah.
and nobody cared about that but us, right? So again, like, don't overthink it and don't over polish something that makes it harder for you to keep it up.
Yeah, so if you have not watched or listened to the show, so I have done both, but I actually discovered this show initially through TikTok because they are really great at sharing these like perfectly curated fun moments from the show in simple vertical clips. These clips did not have captions on them. They did not have, it was just like a clean shot of just one of the hosts, or it went back and forth between the two co-hosts, sharing a moment that felt like you were hanging out with friends. And for the longest time, I didn't even know it was a podcast. They would just come up in TikTok and I was like, these are hilarious. These two people are hilarious. It's so fun to hear what they're saying. And I would share them back and forth. And then, as I started seeing them more and I was like, oh, I gotta follow this account. I would go back, I would find out more information. So again, like I will say exactly what Doc said, where you don't need to overthink it too much. What they have overthought and what they're really intentional with is they know what to say versus what to show. They know how to balance out the fact that they have people who only ever listen and people who only ever watch. And they make it so that it's a great experience, doesn't matter where you are consuming their content. So if you only ever listen to the show, at no point are you sitting there going like, well, this is annoying. They're talking about all this stuff. I can't see it. I just want to, there's all these laughs that are offside that I don't know what's going on. Like, you can follow it and have a great time if you're listening. You can follow it and have a great time if you're watching. If you're just seeing a clip, the clip is contained. So you don't feel like there's not like this crazy feeling of like you're being forced into a platform that you don't want to be in. They do a really great job of knowing where they are, how they show up, and how that feels for their community. So I think it's really, I think they do a really smart job with it. And as Doc said, I think a lot of it is that their visual cues, instead of design, like even our show here is designed, right? They care a lot more about the actual physical space that they're in. So they're in like a studio space. So they're creating an experience through the space and not through the design. So it's not heavily branded at all. It's not, there's not a ton of like crazy graphics or things that are flying in and out. It really is much more about them and about the conversations that they're having and some nods to the physical space behind them. So I think it's important to think through. I know we're obviously very YouTube first. We obviously think that YouTube is a huge, amazing platform, but that doesn't mean that we are not still thinking about people who are not YouTube people, who want to just listen out on their favorite podcast player and they want to be doing it in XYZ different location. You need to be thinking about both those audiences if you are wanting to be a podcast. So, and I think they do a really great job of both of them.
I think one thing that's sort of big too is, again, when you're starting out, it's easy to look outward and try to chase this product that somebody else is making. It's like, I kind of want to do that. I find that all of my sports related people all are trying to overdo it.
Sports people love a graphic.
Well, it's not just that they're watching, like ESPN and Fox. And so those things have just massive budgets. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So there is a way. Okay. I'm laughing at Marshall in the chat, talking about blasphemy on the design work. I'll use some examples. Tiffany, Calvin Klein, right? Like they excel at simplicity, but like it became the thing, right? While Versace, whole opposite end of the spectrum, right? But if you take those brands, Tiffany, that's all you ever have is that one little tiny Tiffany & Co. Times Roman stretched out. Just like, it's something very quintessential about that. So speaking of stripping away all of that, there was a point where MTV was struggling because they felt that all the music videos were starting to get a little samey, and they felt that they were losing their audience. And somebody said, what if we did basically rehearsals, but live in front of a studio audience? And everybody's like, this is the dumbest idea I ever heard. And then one of the last great things that ever happened, Kurt Cobain sits down with a guitar. I'm so happy 'cause today I found my friends. They're in my head. The first time you heard that without all of the right?
Yeah.
When you hear that and see how much pain that dude was in, I think that episode of Unplug was the first time I knew for a fact that we were fixing to lose that dude.
Yeah.
Because you saw the rawness, you saw the pain, you saw it without the overproduction. And I think I strangely enough, Kid from the Hood fell in love with Nirvana on Unplugged because I actually got to hear the lyrics. And vice versa, when they did, Limp Bizkit and Jay-Z, kids not from the hood fell in love with Jay-Z because they got a chance to hear the lyrics. They got a chance to hear the whole sort of breakdown, right? And you can sometimes build a tighter, stronger audience when you stop tripping and just let it be. Not to coin the Beatles phrase in front of Katie.
Wow, from Nirvana to the Beatles. I love it.
Hey, dude, the music is my swing. Like, sometimes you just got to let it be, right? So I think, again, I think the overarching theme of this show is don't overthink it and be willing to experiment and try some things. And, we met Ann at Kit Studios, but her tiny little experiments, I got my book collection from Kit. And so I've been messing with tiny little experiments. And I love the concept because I think that's how the best things happen. They all happen from these tiny little experiments.
Yeah, tiny little experiments. And I think what is particularly cool about this show and about Toni and Ryan's podcast, as well as about the community that Ecamm has built as well, is that the intentionality and the overthinking is on what experience they're creating for their community, and is not on the production of the show and and the graphics and how they feel, right? So it's very clear from being a fan of this show that everything that they and their team is doing, and they have a team, they have a budget, they are full-time podcasters. So this is not a small show. This is not something that you just started. It has a life to it and it's grown over the years. But they care more about what the experience is like for their people where they're at. They care more about what the stories are and the storytelling. They are planning and thinking through that to the nth degree, but they are not worried about what their brand color looks like in their background and the sliding in graphic that comes in, because to them, what matters most is the storytelling and is in bringing their community together and creating these moments that are relatable and funny and kind of let people forget about any of the problems that they have in their life and just spend time together, right? So that is their focus. So whatever is your show is about, or the kind of community that you're building, that's what you should be overthinking. If you want to overthink, that's what you need to be overthinking about. And the rest of it you can let go of. The rest of it is okay to make mistakes. It's okay to be silly. It's okay. You can have any different kind of vibe that you want, on the show. But I think, I think overthinking about some of those pieces, not to say branding isn't important, it is, but I think what matters more is really thinking through what value are you creating for your community, and not on kind of all of those smaller details that really can evolve. And as Doc was saying, you can test and change any of them. We've changed how the flow looks. Poor Marshall. Speaking of Marshall, we've changed how the flow looks 150 times since we launched the show. We've changed, we've gotten rid of a lot of different graphics. We've changed up the colors. We've changed up, the overall vibe and the logo and a whole bunch of things in between. it hasn't really changed the overall goal of the show or the mission that we have for, and what we're trying to do to reach and delight our audience. But we've made tons of changes. Probably will continue to make tons of changes in that area. I think it.
You mentioned it before about their ability to connect, whether you're watching or listening, and the damn kids basically stealing our word and making it popular again is the whole vibe.
Yeah.
But you're right. I mean, I guess you and Nat have the same situation, and so do Lou and I. The idea of having, two best friends that are just sitting around talking about the thing that they're interested in or the thing that, they're both working towards or whatever.
Yep.
That part is there. And I know people will say, well, what if I do the show by myself? You can still have that.
Yeah.
Because the way that I did it when I was doing a show by myself is you pick different people in the audience to talk to in that particular episode.
Mm-hmm.
So when I record one of my videos that I'm doing now, sometimes I have a software that I'm showing or a tool that I'm showing or something of that nature. But I often think about who is it that can use this the most, right? Who is it in my LGL crew? And I make like I'm talking to them because then it feels like you're having a conversation with a friend. The person who's listening, even if it wasn't meant for them, they'll still hear it. And I do often at the end say, I don't know who need to hear this, but, and then if I know who it was, I'll actually say their name because I'm like, okay, technically I was talking to Paul, but the rest of y'all could listen too, right? Or the other day I did one and I mentioned what Marianne said about like the 3-minute podcast because I think that was so enlightening to me that the labeling around things can be almost gatekeepy sometimes because the labels got people, tripping. And it ain't her fault that she didn't know that. It's not a bad thing. It means that the community is starting to get a little bit too mean about it. That, she didn't assume that you can make a 10-minute podcast, right? I think that says more about the art, the space, and where it's going, and the mislabeling of things. Or, me, I've always said I struggle with people trying to tell people what a podcast is and what a podcast isn't. Because a podcast isn't anything. It's just a stupid name that was attached to a show. And any type of show that you do can be called a podcast. You just need to put the word podcast in it.
Yeah.
That's it. That's all you really need to do. It has nothing to do with the RSS feed anymore. It has nothing to do with whether it's audio or video or both. It could be anything. A podcast can be whatever the heck it wants to be. It's like vanilla cream. Vanilla cream is vanilla cream until it's buttercream, until it's, rum raisin or German chocolate or whatever the heck you mix into it, or, bechamel, right?
Yep.
And so I love the idea of, the two friends doing their thing. But if you're doing it by yourself, you can still make that happen. And a lot of it has to do with call back to the beginning, understanding your community, even if you're starting with a community of one.
Mm-hmm.
Because for Toni and Ryan to be where they are today, they started with a community of one.
Mm-hmm.
Somebody. It could have been their friend.
They were probably just literally talking to each other, too. They may have started with a community of zero, literally. Yeah.
Correct. And I think that's the thing, because I think people are like, well, they have a big community, so it's easy, right? Everybody started at nothing. And it's really hard to understand that. Like, all of the successful people in the world started out pissing in their diaper too, bro. Like, you really got to get over that concept that there's some kind of special thing that these people have, because they don't. They just don't.
Yeah, and I do think it is like important for people to understand. Like, I think you're right. Like the term podcast has become this like crazy thing, and everyone assigns like a different definition to it depending on where they're coming from and their age and how long they've been in the industry and how long they've been a podcaster or whether they're brand new. And I don't know, the more that I do it, the more that I realize that it, like, again, it really goes back to like understanding what it is you want to create and understanding who your community is and where you want to put the content to engage and connect with them. Like, I've become very aware that my podcast really is way more of a live show. It also it echoes out on podcast platforms, and I put it out there, every week. But I have maybe 7 people that listen out on the podcast, like, players. It's there if they want to, but my main audience joins me on YouTube. And so my focus then is on YouTube. I try my best to make sure that we're not saying or doing anything that would antagonize someone listening, but my focus is where my community is, which is on YouTube. If those numbers were the other way around and I had this huge audience that loved listening to me, then I would think about that. I would think carefully about, like, how I'm creating the content that way, so that I'm not, I'm going where my community is and community lives, and engaging with them that way. So I think it's important to think through that. And again, I wanted to bring this particular podcast to you all as just a great example, because they really do a fantastic job of making a conversational podcast into a club experience where it feels like you can be friends with them. It feels like you can be part of the experience. You can contribute to it. They have made it more than a show. It is an entire experience. And I really think that these days, that's what's going to make a big difference in the podcasting space is not how you design it or what platforms you're using or where it's sitting. It's really understanding what you want to do. And it doesn't have to be, like, as Doc said, it doesn't have to be a specific amount of time. It doesn't have to be fun either. Like, I know a lot of the examples that we show and share are, like, silly and funny, and and the hosts that we put up are, like, super laid back. But that doesn't, like, if you are, like, a doctor or a lawyer, or you're talking about something, like, really serious, like maybe you're talking about mental health or trauma, like, you can still be authentically yourself. You can still create an incredible community, even if you are not silly or fun or taking that tactic. I think what's important is focusing on what you want to create and the community that you're building and want to grow. I think it really matters.
My favorite show right now, always has been actually for about 3 years, is Diary of a CEO. Mm-hmm. And there's nothing funny about that
right?
show.
Yeah.
Sometimes I'm yelling at the guests that he brings on because I'm like, oh, this person is an absolute quack. But other times they're just really good, right? And he does, everybody gives him crap because he brings on these various different medical people because he's trying to figure his health out. But he also brings on athletes and, CEOs, actually, people who wrote a book, whatever the case may be. So yep. I love that particular show, and I just love the entire vibe about the show. Yeah. Right? It's just, he's sitting there asking the person the things that we probably would ask that person if we could get to that person.
Yep.
So you're right. It doesn't have to be funny. You mentioned something about, making sure that you have it good for the video watcher and for the listener. I want to say that that's a choice, because do you know of a restaurant that is off the chain that does not do takeout?
Yeah, definitely. I can name quite a few.
Yeah, because some food ain't good takeout.
Yeah.
And so if I let you take this out, you're not going to get the experience, and your ass could be all up on Yelp with the 1 star. So if you make a show that's video only, lean into it, pimp. Lean into it. And it's like, you might put it on the audio things just so that people can find it, which is fine. But when they say, well, I see the podcast and you're only talking to the people on YouTube. Yeah, mofo, because that's where the party at. Like, come through, right? And if you can't, cool. Like, I think it's fine to be like, this is an audio only show or this is a video only show.
Yeah.
The funny thing about it, all the audio people who are hating video podcasts right now because they look funny, they're all like, I'm never making a video podcast. And they're like adamant about it. And it's funny to me because I'm like, y'all are losing it. But whatever, do you, pimp? You're going to keep saying that until YouTube grows 3 times as big as they are right now in the next 2 years. And then you have no choice. But, it's okay. If you really only want to be one or the other, it's absolutely fine. You just got to lean into it and you got to live with your decision. It's your decision. I definitely know that a lot of my stuff wouldn't be good as audio because I'm showing you something. And when I pop on the game in the car because I'm in traffic and I didn't make it home, I know that listening to the football or the football game on ESPN radio sucks, but at least I can hear something.
Yeah.
And as soon as I can get to it, TV is on. Or if we're at, Hoppies and everybody's making noise and I can't hear what the commentators are saying, nothing to do with it. I can still see the game. I still know what's going on. And many occasions you're sitting in an airport bar somewhere and you're like watching the game. You can't hear nothing, but you still are all up in there. So don't put weird constraints on yourself if it's not you.
Yeah, and I will say, like lessons from other shows that are out there. I have seen a number of quote unquote audio only podcasts experiment with video in clever and creative ways. That's not just I'm going to move my entire podcast over to video. And I think again, it really goes back to thinking through what kind of experience are you creating. It is not going to work to merely put your audio only podcast up on YouTube and just have it as a listening thing, because YouTube is a visual video first platform, right? So, but you can and again, Toni and Ryan is a great example of this. Toni and Ryan they will do live streams for their community where they're all crafting together, or they're playing a game together, or they're doing something that is a one-off experience that is an extension of the show, but is not the show itself, right? So you're giving people a reason to actually want to participate in that experience, right? So you can do that. Morbid is another one of my favorite shows, a true crime podcast. And they have not fully moved all the way over to video for all of their episodes. They're an audio first podcast, but they have a listener tales series where every now and then they will take stories from their listeners. And for those episodes, they are now putting those ones up on YouTube. And they have they dress up in fun Halloween kind of costumes. There's a different theme every episode that they do. So they've figured out that for their audience and for what they're trying to build for their community, it makes way more sense for just that one part of their show to be visual and to be on YouTube. They're creating an experience that makes sense for that platform. So Mike's question about if your focus is on audio, does that not go to benefit both audiences, or does that focus on audio come at a cost needed to focus on YouTube? I think what you need to remember is that they are very different platforms. So you can have an instance where you have a show, like ours is a good example of this, right? Where we are creating video first and we can easily pull the audio out, and the people who are experiencing audio will have a great experience. They're not going to have the same experience as the people who are watching us live on YouTube and are able to contribute to the conversation. And likewise, if we were audio only, it would be way harder for us to backtrack and take that content and make it into video content. So I think you really need to think through, what experience you want to create. So, and there's no wrong, as Doc was saying, it's okay to be YouTube only. It's okay to be audio only. It's okay even down there, if you've built an amazing audience and it's audio only and you want nothing to do with YouTube, that's totally fine. You need to figure out what it is that you want.
But it's fine.
It's a bad decision if what you want to do if you want crazy growth. I don't know. I think it's just a different decision.
Of course. Yeah, it depends on what you want. Yeah,
you might have an incredible.
You're right. I just say that to be jokey.
There's a lot of growth on YouTube, certainly, but I don't think it's 100%. Necessarily a bad decision. It might be the right decision.
And you might not want to grow.
Yeah, you might not want to grow.
And some people don't realize that, because I have a pushback with Paul.
Your audience might be older and never want to be on YouTube. Maybe your audience are people who are literally only ever in their cars, or maybe they're there are people who are on the go and are not gonna. I don't know. There might be reasons for it. I don't know what that reason is, but I'm gonna let you live this fantasy. No, but
so Paul C, the opposite Paul, UK Paul, he's like, you do this and then you can grow the channel bigger or whatever. And I'm like, I kind of don't want to grow the channel bigger. I like where I'm at, right? I know what my purpose is. I know where I'm going. I know the whole idea. But the only reason why I want to plaque is I just want to plaque people when they have something stupid to say.
Yeah.
Other than that, it really doesn't matter to me that, there's 200,000 people are watching or whatever, because I think that could also change the vibe of the community. Right now, I like the fact that I know every single person in my community. right? Like I have some sort of connection to each and every single one of them. And, can remember their birthdays or what's going on in their life or whatever. And I think that will become harder as it becomes bigger. I like the whole boutique thing of it. Mm-hmm. It's like, there's a restaurant in your town. Again, I don't know why. Maybe I'm hungry. There's a restaurant in your town where everybody says, if you guys had a bigger spot, this place would be off the chain. But that person could not cook at the level that they cook right now if they were bigger.
It would change.
They have to remain. They have to remain small in order to put out the level of quality that they want. And I will say, again, you're 100% correct on Mike's point, because I look at Conan and I look at Smartless. There's no reason for there to be a video version of their shows, but there is. Mm-hmm. And all that video is a camera in the studio while they're recording the audio side of it.
Yeah. Which
is funny because all of them come from the video production world background. Right? So, you got Jason Bateman, Will Ferrell, and Sean Hayes, like Conan O'Brien, and what will be eventually the Stephen Colbert Show, all of the above. There's even Oprah, her new podcast. It has no reason to be a video podcast, but it's there because it's oatmeal chilling in her house in Maui, flying people out to come talk story with her.
But
and they're just at a table.
The cool thing to note is that all of those people are all talent. So they have been in video production environments, but none of them are video producers. So if you had a behind the scenes video producer person, they would struggle with the content, but their show would be highly produced, right? Whereas the Oprahs and the famous talent people, they're great at storytelling, at sharing all of that. That is their background and their passion. So it's just good to remember as you're watching or listening to some of these different shows out there that there's a ton of stuff that you can pull from it for your own needs. But it's good to also remember where they came from, what kind of budget they have, don't just pull and steal. So that we call this show Steal This Show, talking about Toni and Ryan. Don't just steal everything as is. Think about what makes it work and what you really like about it and how you can apply that underlaying segment or thing to your show to make your show better. So hopefully it's helpful. And there are a ton of shows out there. So again, if Toni and Ryan is not your show, totally fine. But I do think listening to shows even in completely different genres than what you're trying to create is a really great way to figure out what could work for you and what might be something that would make a big difference in the content you're creating.
I do like the concept of sort of studying what, the other guys are doing and picking up little notes here and there, which is the reason why I tell my people all the time, if you're going to watch YouTube, you got to study YouTube. Mm-hmm. And I'm looking at all the various things that you can pick up, whatever. I look at things from Smartless or even Toni and Ryan. I was like, that would be a good way to add, a little extra something to the show. So fully understood.
I love it. Well, thanks for joining me for this conversation. Thanks to everyone for hanging out with us. And again, a reminder, we are looking for a flow rider to join us live on our episode recording next week. So if that's you, email us flow@ecamm.com or swing over to flow.ecamm.com where you can sign up for our newsletter, leave us a voicemail, tell us you want to be a guest, all of that fun stuff.
I love it. So don't forget, people, if you need anything from us, you know how to find us, but also remember that thanks to Shore put this together for us. So we always want to give a big shout out to Shore for allowing this to be possible. So big ups to Shore. You can find out more about shore.com. And of course, everything you need to find for us is at flow.ecamm.com. That's flow.ecamm.com. I always want to say Eminem. But yes, you can leave us a voicemail, reach out to us, just catch all the old episodes, all of the above. And no matter whether you choose audio or video, just choose something. Just make something. That's my advice.
Absolutely. If you need some things to steal, you can always steal this show. You can steal all the things that we do and say are happy for you.
Just don't steal Luis. We kind of need him.
Don't steal Luis.
That's it.
Don't steal
Get your own producer.
Well, thank you. I know last week we challenged a bunch of you to do a recording. And I have seen a couple of them come through. Huge shout out to Bruce, who emailed us directly with his recording, which was awesome to watch. So keep those coming. If you want to practice and send those our way, you can do that in the Ecamm community, ecamm.tv/community. We'll drop you right into the community. You can share and post those. And we love to see what everyone's creating. So we appreciate it.
There you go. You know what we say around these parts? Flow Riders out.
Bye, everyone.